Welcome back to Creepy Real Stories. In South Africa's Northern Cape lies a small, unassuming pool of blue water. But beneath its surface, Bushman's hole plunges deeper than anyone could imagine. One of the world's deepest freshwater caves and one of the deadliest. Today, we uncover the terrifying stories of the divers who dared to explore it and paid the ultimate price. So sit tight and watch closely, because what lies beneath is far more dangerous than it looks.
In early August of 1993, an elite group of cave divers arrived in South Africa for a very specific purpose. They were there to explore a sinkhole known locally as Bushman's Gat, more commonly called Bushman's Hole, which, at the time, was believed to be the third largest freshwater cave known to man. But more importantly, this expedition had a goal: to set a new world record for the deepest cave dive ever completed. Among those invited was a highly respected South African diver named Bushman. He had extensive experience navigating the country's dangerous sinkholes, making him a valuable asset to the team. Booty didn't arrive alone. He brought along his close friend, Eben Layden.
Eben hadn't been invited, and that immediately raised concerns. Dives of this magnitude are tightly regulated. Every diver, every roll, every contingency is planned in advance. Showing up with an unapproved diver wasn't just frowned upon, it was a serious violation of protocol. Initially, the team hesitated, but it appears Beauty vouched for Eben's abilities, and since their dive wouldn't be the actual record attempt, that responsibility was reserved for legendary cave diver Sheck Exley. The issue was eventually dropped. Eben was allowed to dive. That decision would prove fatal.
Before Sheck's record attempt, Booty and Eben suited up for an exploratory dive. They entered the surface pool and began their descent through the vertical tunnel leading away from the opening. The water was calm. Visibility was excellent. As they passed the first bend and continued downward, everything seemed normal. At around 197 feet, the narrow tunnel opened into an enormous chamber, a space so vast it swallowed the light. Just before entering this chamber, divers typically pause for a brief check-in. Booty and Eben did exactly that. Everything appeared fine, so Booty continued downward.
Moments later, at the 197-foot mark, Booty realized Eben was no longer beside him. He turned, and then he saw it. Eben's flashlight beam was cutting wildly through the darkness, jerking back and forth in rapid, erratic movements. It didn't look exploratory, it looked desperate. What Booty didn't know yet was that Eben had already emptied his first air cylinder, a catastrophic mistake in cave diving. This violated one of the most fundamental safety rules in the sport, the rule of thirds. 1/3 of your air going in, 1/3 coming out, 1/3 reserved for emergencies. Eben had broken that rule before they even finished descending.
For reasons that were never fully understood, Eben was forced to switch to his backup tank far too early. But when he reached for the regulator, it wasn't there. It had slipped behind him while gearing up and become pinned beneath the harness holding his twin cylinders. Despite multiple equipment checks before the dive, no one noticed. By the time Eben realized the problem, he was completely out of air. Panic set in instantly. Instinct took over. Eben bolted upward. This was the worst possible reaction. In cave diving, the exit is almost never directly above you. In Bushman's Hole, the ceiling stretches far overhead, riddled with small openings that lead nowhere. A diver could swim endlessly and never find the true exit. By the time Booty reached Eben, it was already too late. Eben had stopped moving. And despite locating him, Booty was powerless. To save himself, he had to complete mandatory decompression stops, which meant sitting there, knowing his friend had no air and there was nothing he could do. Once Booty surfaced with Eben's body, the team spent over 90 minutes performing CPR. They refused to give up, but it was hopeless. When a doctor arrived, Eben was pronounced dead. Bushman's Hole had claimed its first victim of the expedition, and it almost claimed another without anyone realizing it, because later, when police searched Booty's apartment during the investigation, they failed to notice Eben's severed head wrapped in newspaper hidden behind a stove.
Bushman's Hole sits on the remote Mount Carmel game farm, an 11,000-acre property on the edge of the Kalahari Desert. Getting there alone is a logistical nightmare. At first glance, the sinkhole looks unimpressive. A steep hike leads down to a small, algae-covered pool. But beneath the surface lies a chamber so massive it defies scale. It stretches 833 feet long, 259 feet wide, and plunges nearly 927 feet deep. Divers have said you could fit the Eiffel Tower inside. At the bottom lies nothing but mud, silt, and darkness. And for decades, no one knew how deep it truly went.
In the early 1980s, a diver named Nuno Gomes began exploring the hole. By 1993, Sheck Exley had set a record at 863 feet. That number consumed Nuno. In 1994, he returned and reached 755 feet, then 827 feet. Both times, severe decompression problems forced him to stop, but he couldn't let it go. In 1996, he came back with a full support team, including 8 divers and a doctor. And this time, everything nearly went wrong.
As Nuno descended, the bottom appeared far sooner than expected. Only half his legs were functioning. The pressure had crushed the rest. Unable to control his buoyancy, he slammed into the cave floor, kicking up a blinding cloud of silt. Worse still, he became stuck in the mud. Disoriented, trembling from helium exposure, and battling nitrogen narcosis, Nuno tried to swim upward and failed. Instead of panicking, he stopped, inflated his buoyancy wings, and slowly rose free. Against all odds, he reached 927 feet. The dive lasted 12 hours and 15 minutes. The descent, just 14 minutes.
Before Nuno's successful record, a 20-year-old diver named Dion Dreyer received a phone call. It was Nuno. He wanted Dion on his support team. Despite his age, Dion had logged over 200 dive hours. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But Dion's mother was terrified. As the dive approached, she begged him not to go. He reassured her. On December 17, 1994, Dion entered Bushman's Hole. He would never leave it.
During ascent, at around 164 feet, Dion vanished. The team saw his light falling. Nuno chased him, but had to stop. Going any deeper would have killed them both. Dion sank all the way to the bottom. The cause? Likely hypercapnia, carbon dioxide poisoning. He blacked out and disappeared into the depths.
Years later, a diver named Dave Shaw would attempt what no one else dared. Using a closed-circuit rebreather, Dave planned not only to beat Nuno's record, but to recover Dion's body. In 2004, Dave found Dion at the bottom, and 2 days later he promised Dion's parents he would bring their son home.
On January 5, 2005, Dave descended alone. At 886 feet, he reached Dion, but something went wrong. Dion's body floated. The bag wouldn't fit. Dave's breathing increased. Carbon dioxide built up. Tunnel vision set in. Dave refused to abandon the task. His light snagged on a rope. His breathing slowed, then stopped. Dave Shaw drowned at the bottom of Bushman's Hole.
Support diver Don Shirley barely survived. He suffered permanent inner ear damage. Later, police divers discovered something shocking. Dave had succeeded. He had brought Dion back. Both bodies were recovered. Dave's helmet camera captured his final moments.
Bushman's hole doesn't have a long list of victims, but every life it has taken was among the most skilled divers on Earth, which is exactly what makes it so terrifying. You've been watching Creepy Real Stories. If you made it this far, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Sleep carefully.